Hello and welcome to the Chronic Comeback podcast. Before we begin today, I just want to remind anyone who's listening, please subscribe. I haven't asked it in previous episodes, so if you are listening on whatever platform you're listening on, please subscribe so it can reach more people. Today, I'm really excited to have on the show Sophie Grace Holmes. Sophie was diagnosed with cystic fibrosis aged 4 months and was told for as young as she can remember that she wouldn't live past 16. Rather than accept this death sentence, she chose to go the opposite way and believe that she wouldn't only survive this death sentence, she would actually thrive and make something of her life, astounding doctors and those around her with her results. Rather than protect herself and her body, she continued to push her physical limits by doing a number of crazy, amazing physical feats. And the ones I'm about to go through now, she's done a lot more than that, but scaling Mont Blanc, Mount Kilimanjaro and Gran Paradiso, hiking the Himalayas, and so much more. Through her website and Instagram following of almost 50,000, she continually broadcasts positive messages of belief, grit and resilience. And I would urge anyone going through a tough time at the moment to go and follow her message, because it's really inspiring, the continual message she's putting out every day. It's this bulletproof mindset that makes her such a perfect guest for this show. So thank you so much for coming on. How's it going?
Hello. Well, what an intro that was. Thank you very much.
Well, there's a lot to go through. What's really interesting about your story is, and comparing it to other people that I've spoken to and comparing it to my own story, is that I had a period of time in my life where, everything was, normal, whatever that is. And then I've had to go through the kind of transition, whereas for you, it was, you've only ever known this situation, which, can have its own challenges. So could you just talk through, your journey from as young as you can remember, and all of the experience with doctors and yeah, just that story really?
Yeah, of course. Like for me, obviously, I'm going to start out saying that I'm grateful for this struggle, because I think the perception and the mindset around struggle can sometimes be seen as negative, but in actual fact, it can be the making of you. So obviously I was diagnosed with cystic fibrosis, which is a life-threatening lung disease. It's a genetic disease, so it's inherited from your parents due to a faulty CFTR. And I was diagnosed at 4 months old. So not only was I obviously diagnosed with this disease, I was also 10 weeks early, clearly eager for life, ready to get going. But my parents, obviously, when they got this diagnosis, felt like they were bringing up a child to die, because they got told that I'd be living in hospital, living on oxygen. I wouldn't live past the age of 16 years old. And basically that I would never be able to achieve anything. And so on that basis, obviously for them, it was like soul destroying, but little did they know the force of nature that I was going to become. And actually, despite the fact, obviously growing up, I was very different to my friends, because I had to take lots of medication, like 80 tablets a day, inhalers, all these kinds of things, do lots of physio, exercise. I was in and out of hospital, having constant testing, like lung function testing, blood tests, all these different things. But for me, that was very normal. And actually, although obviously I had extra help through IVs and things, up until the age of 16, I honestly did not believe I had CF, because I could beat my friends in PE, obviously, because PE is like the highest form of comparison for me. So I could beat everyone in PE, I could keep up with my friends, like I was very well. And actually I was like, what are the doctors going on about? Because they're saying to me that I'm going to die. They're saying to me that I can't do anything, but I think I can. And I think they're wrong. So from a young age, like I was so self-believing naturally and so positive. And I was like, yeah, but they're saying this, but I can do this. So who do I believe? Myself? Do I trust myself? Or do I trust a doctor that is looking at medical kind of backgrounds and obviously comparing to potentially other people with CF? And I remember thinking, like, I wonder what would happen, like, if I asked them, like, what would they do? And I remember saying to them, I was like, look, I'm so well, like, you're saying to me, I think one of the strongest lines was, oh, like, Soph, like, you've made it to 16, well done, we didn't expect that, but you won't make it to 30, how do you feel? And I was like, but I don't believe you. Like, I don't see how like I can suddenly die if you're looking at my results and I'm super well. So of course, like I just continued in the fashion. Like I was competing my horse, I was competing for Essex in 400 meters, I was in all the school teams, and I was like, life is great. I'm just living like a normal kid. And I was very grateful for the fact that my parents, despite obviously what they were told, was still allowing me to be very normal and allowing me to kind of like do every activity I wanted to do. And I guess for me, the moment my life completely changed as I knew it was when I was 19 years old. Because obviously up until then, despite obviously having a few bits of extra help, I was like, I'm fine. What is CF? Kind of living naively, which I do believe can be powerful as well. When I was 19, I basically became seriously unwell. I was in hospital for 2 weeks, lost 50% lung function in a matter of months. The doctors didn't know why, they couldn't fix it. And I remember sitting in my hospital bed and the consultant sitting on my bed being like, Soph, like, we don't know what's happened. We don't know why we can't fix it, but we are only going to give you a few years to live now. Like CF has finally caught up with you. And I kind of was like, oh yeah, that's like a really nice thing to say, but I don't have time today. Like I don't have time to do any of this. Like, I don't want to be in this hospital. I've like, want to adventure the world. Like I want to do these things. So I sat there and I remember at the time, like in hospital, they would give you laptops. And I was like, right, I'm going to make a bucket list of things I want to do. Because if, for example, my life does happen to be shorter, what is it that I'm going to fill those years in? Because for me, it's about the year, what you do with the years rather than the years you have. Because you could live to 100 and achieve nothing. Whereas you could live till 50, but have the most amazing life and look back and be like, yes, like I did it. I've got stories to tell. Like I've lived. And I remember sitting there and one of the doctors came in and like, oh, like, what are you doing? I was like, oh, I'm making up this list. And they're like, oh, but you know you're not going to be able to do it. I was like, yeah, but I will. And basically I said to them, look, you don't believe me, but I'm going to go and do this and prove you all wrong. I'm going to prove that I'm going to get my health back. I'm going to prove that I can do anything I put my mind to, despite what you think about my body. I'm going to go and do it. And so 6 months after that conversation, I went and summited Mount Kilimanjaro. I had one doctor who signed me off and she believed that it was going to be okay. And I remember there was another doctor just being like, yeah, you're not going to make it. And I look forward to being here when you get back because you're going to need extra help when you get back. And I was like, but I'm not. Like, this is the thing. I was like, you don't understand. So obviously I climbed Kilimanjaro. I did 10 burpees at the top because when else are you going to have the opportunity to do burpees at 6,000 meters? So when I did that and I came back and put these photos on his desk and I was like, look, like I can help you, help other people. If it's worked for me, you know, then obviously it should work for other people. And, you know, I worked super hard. This is when I kind of retrained into fitness and kind of changed my life around to do all the challenges and the big events. And it took him after that moment 4 years to see me in clinic again, to be like, I'm so sorry, Sophie, I was wrong. Like, how can you help me? And it just proves like, obviously my story can be very different to other people. However, it proves what you can do. If you are faced with a decision, you either accept it or you take action and fight against it and show, you know, every person has the ability to achieve something extraordinary or something higher than other people believe. You have to believe in yourself so strongly that other people then have no choice but to.
Yeah. I think there's a number of things there that are really interesting. So first of all, you actually told, and I imagine, are you still told to this day? Like, do you still have the odd doctor or someone that comes up that maybe hasn't got that experience with you and tries to make you doubt, you know, that you are this force of nature? I love that, by the way.
Oh yeah, definitely. This is the thing. Last September, I did the ride across Britain, which is 1,000 miles from Land's End to John O'Groats. Did it in 9 days. Of course I did. Why not? Conquer the world, conquer the country. And I had a hospital appointment about 2 weeks after that. And obviously with endurance, exhaustion can last for a couple of weeks because of the impact that you're putting on your body. We were on our bikes 12 hours a day, 9 days in a row. So, you know, that's a lot of hours, a lot of riding, a lot of energy.
Yeah.
And I remember going into the hospital and my numbers were a bit lower, but I knew that they were going to be lower because I was like, look, my body hasn't recovered yet. Like, how do you expect me to be at my best? And this doctor was like, oh, like your fitness isn't good for you. You need to just sit down and rest. I was like, look, I don't want to have this conversation with you because I've never met you before, but just trust me a little bit. Like, I know what I'm doing. And she was like, nope, you're wrong, blah, blah. And I said, oh, like, is Nick in? And she was like, yeah. And I was like, because Nick was basically the doctor that told me I couldn't. And then like, I was like, yeah, okay, I believe you. And I was like, oh, could you go and get him, please? He was like, okay. She came in. I said, oh, Nick, could you just listen to this? And she repeated herself. And he was like, I really wouldn't. Just believe her, kind of thing. And I was like, it just shows, like, you know, there will be doubters, but that's actually okay. And like, you can use them to fuel you and push you forward. And, you know, it's a really good reminder to show you not only how far you've come, but what you also can do.
Yeah.
And almost like, I always kind of thrive a little bit off people who be like, oh, that's good, but you can't. And I'm like, maybe that's the kick I needed to be like, I can then take this up even more.
Yeah. That just the fact that, because I've read books on, and I've experienced it myself, when you have a doctor that is negative and you hear these stories where if a doctor says, oh, you know, you've got 6 months to live, invariably they live 6 months because that doctor who you trust has given you that time frame. So the fact that is it almost like a competition with you and your kind of, and your situation and the doctor, that you're like, screw that, I'm not only going to not pay attention to what you're saying, I'm going to take the piss and I'm going to go even further. Is there something about that you just like, I just want to take it even further and be competitive with it?
Well, yeah, I think you've obviously noticed I'm very competitive. But also for me, like, I've taken so much time to learn who I am and what I can do and how I can progress myself without burning out or without maybe peaking too early or things like that. And I believe that, I just do truly believe that you can do anything you put your mind to. I think everybody has ability. And I think where for my entire life, I basically got told that I'd never do anything. My instant reaction, if someone says, oh, but you know, you wouldn't be able to do that, I'm like, well, yeah, I can.
Yeah.
I might not be right this minute, but I will be able to do it.
Yeah.
And I think, you know, we live in a world where there is always going to be people that think you can't because it's a perception of perhaps their experience or what they think they can and can't do. So for example, the doctors were basing my health upon somebody or people with CF in general, rather than seeing it as an individual case.
Yeah.
And, you know, I've always been a very firm believer of, you know, cut the excuses, get out there, do it. Like, one of my favorite lines that was said by a friend of mine was, it's the excuses you make today that will be the regrets that you have at the end of your life.
Yeah.
And I fear the fact that I could one day just make an excuse simply because I couldn't be bothered or something, and then I'd regret not doing that. Like, for example, the most simplest form would be, I'd make an excuse that I'm not going to go and do a training session that had been set out. But I know that I'd never regret it if I did it, but I'd regret not doing it because that time's going to pass anyway.
Yeah. Yeah. The way you feel after doing a workout, after you've been dreading it, you're always like, what? I just need to always do this.
Yeah.
Yeah. So do you have other CF patients that you've spoken with, and you get the feeling that they're just like, oh, I'm just not like you. You know, I don't have what you've got, and they can't relate to it? Or is there an element of it, you know, you've been able to they've also been able to use their mindset? I mean, do you have much interaction with other CF patients?
Yeah, so I get, obviously, the thing with CF is you can't meet each other because of cross infection. So I think it's the only disease in the world that you can't physically meet somebody else because you're making each other really sick, which is really sad.
That is really sad.
So obviously a lot of it is done via online, and I do get loads of questions about health, improving lung capacity, fitness, mindset. And I always try and remind them that, firstly, I was lucky and I was born with a more positive, upbeat, determined mindset anyway. Obviously, I work on it every single day.
Yeah.
Hard work pays off. But also not to compare what I can do. Like, even if we have the same level of lung function, it doesn't mean we have the same level of fitness.
Yeah.
So even if I say to people, like, if you're starting out, don't compare what I'm doing right now, because I've been training my whole life.
Yeah.
And, you know, I believe in pushing yourself to do the things that are hard every day, pushing yourself to do the things you don't want to do, to build in discipline and mental toughness.
Yeah.
Because if you don't do those things, then life will remain hard. Like, I'm a firm believer of doing what's hard to make life a bit easier, so that if things do get hard, you can actually deal with it because you're used to putting yourself under that pressure and under that kind of stress. Whereas if you just do what's easy all the time, the moment a bit of stress comes in, you don't know what to do because you have no idea how to deal with it, which is why I love pushing myself to these big events. Like I did an 80-mile paddleboard race from the Bahamas to Florida through the night. So not only were you battling the tiredness of being meant to be asleep, you're battling obviously the ocean and the possibility of seeing a shark. But also 80 miles is a very long way.
That is a long way.
And most of the time you can't see land, which is crazy.
In the middle of the night you were doing this? Yeah,
so we left at like midnight and the sun doesn't come out till 6. So you've got 6 hours of just seeing like your support boat. That's the only light you've got. And obviously they're guiding you like, so you don't get lost in like the ocean. But it was the most incredible event because not only are you kind of like battling your mind, because I don't know if you've ever pushed yourself to the point of hallucination and crazy things that come with like big long events.
No.
Like you kind of, you're like, no, you're crazy.
I thought I had pushed myself physically, but not to hallucination. Wow.
The thing is, where I've done these big 24-hour events, like this actually only took 10 hours, but when you're pushing your mindset into like realms of ways you have never before, like I'd never paddleboard the ocean for one. Secondly, never paddleboarded at night. But I was like, right, I'm going to go and do this event. I've been invited to go and do it. It's for a CF charity in America. And I remember getting on my board being like, this is going to be phenomenal because I'm going to struggle so much. Because, you know, when you get to the point of exhaustion and you're always going to have the little devil on your shoulder that turns around and says, but you can get off your board.
Yeah.
I know I would regret that moment for the rest of my life. The only way you're ever going to stop me in a race is probably if I've died.
Yeah.
So I can't physically put one foot in front of the other.
Yeah.
And, you know, what you get from pushing yourself to those points or pushing yourself further than you're used to is you really find out what you're made of, who you are, and actually what you want out of life until you get comfortable with being in an uncomfortable situation for a period of time.
Yeah.
Comfort is the thief of everything.
Yeah.
It's lovely, but it's also the thief of everything.
Yeah.
I hate being in comfort for too long because your mindset wanders. You'll find that you're less disciplined, you're less happy. Like the happiest moments of my entire life have been the moments that I've struggled the most when I've been doing the challenges. Like I remember we were 3 miles into this race and it was like high winds and storms, like thunder and lightning on the ocean.
Yeah.
And I remember the captain being like, guys, like, well done, you've done 3 miles. And I'm like, 3 miles. We've got like loads more to do. And we've already been going an hour. Like I'm exhausted.
Yeah.
Like I remember thinking, oh my God, but then it's like that moment you're like, no, I'm going to dig in, I'm going to do it. And it's that for me, that's where the passion lies. Like it's obviously a moment of insanity and you do question your every single life choice. However, what you get once you finish that and you get through the other side is phenomenal.
Yeah. I think we talked before, and I don't know, have you heard of David Goggins before? Yeah. You're like the female David Goggins.
I would love that. I will take that. I think he's great.
So what do you, there's a couple of things that I wanted to talk about from from your story, but something that came to mind then, and it's a struggle that I go through because sport and activity is just such a huge part for me and my mindset. And I always hear this, listen to your body. And then I think that's just it. If I listen to my body, I would just sit in a chair because, you know, I'm aching. I don't feel great. But then when I force myself to go and do these things, I don't feel any worse physically, but mentally, like I feel so much better. I understand for, you know, do you have that same, have you had that same battle, or do you not get there because of your medication? You don't really have the kind of physical side of it, so you don't have to push through that side of it? Or
I think there's a difference between listening to your body because you actually need rest and listening to your body because you're being lazy. Because for me, I get this question quite a lot actually, which I completely understand because I think it's the battle of, do I push or do I not? And I think it's really dependent upon what you've done in the previous days. If you've trained super hard for 5 days and you're tired, yeah, obviously have a rest. But a lot of the time you feel tired for not doing a lot as well.
Yeah.
So if I was going to base this on myself, if I was feeling like I needed a rest, I'd be like, but do you though? Like, what have you done in the last few days? Mentally, how are you feeling? Because obviously a lot of mental exhaustion, if you've been busy or there's been a lot of stress in your life, obviously that is also something you need to take into consideration when you're training, because I think the perception of training is that every single session should be hardcore and you should be laid out on the floor, when actually it doesn't need to be like that. Some sessions need to be less intense. Obviously, if you want progress, there's a certain amount of stress you need to put on your body regularly. But also it's okay just to go to the gym and have a nice session, or have a gentle run, or whatever your goals are, or whatever you're training for. But the most important thing is to try and decide and learn your body enough that you know the difference between, am I being lazy or do I need to push myself through this? Because I think it's all well and good pushing yourself through when you're tired all the time, but in actual fact, rest is actually more powerful than training. If you're training hard, your recovery and rest is by far more important for progress than it is for you to keep training hard.
Yeah.
For me, like, if people say I train for like X amount of hours per week and I don't rest and recover, well, firstly, I don't believe you train hard enough then if you can train that much. Secondly, if you're not resting and recovering, you're going to plateau or lose progress.
Yeah. No, I completely agree. I think what you're saying as well is it's scalable, right? Even if you're like, you know, bed bound, there's still something you can do more than what you're doing. And just like, you know, you're the other extreme, you know, there's always something more you can do, which is that a little bit extra. And I think that's the important thing. I don't want people listening to this thinking, oh, that's so unattainable for me. You know, I can only walk a bit every day, but you could probably do something a little bit extra.
Well, this is the thing, the way I see this situation. Say, for example, it's like that person can literally walk for 5 minutes a day.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So even if all you can do is 5 minutes a day, I see anything that you're trying to add to your life is like cashing in a bank. So say that you can only give 1% per day, which is still better than nothing.
Yeah.
365 days in a year, that's 365% better than you were the year before.
Yeah.
And that's really what counts. It's those small milestones that you hit regularly, because obviously things have to be consistent over a longer period of time for progress, is what counts, rather than you being like, right, I'm going to give 100% on Monday and then I can't train for a week because I'm tired, or like I give 100% and actually then I can't walk for the rest of the week, or I can't get out of bed because mentally and physically I can't. Well, how about scaling that completely back and doing, you know, 10% per day for 3 days consistently for a couple of weeks? Then I may be doing 4 days for a few more weeks, and then eventually you'll build that up. You don't have to kind of like leap into it, like, because I think the problem with social media is you see people doing the extreme because they only post certain things, but actually they won't be doing that all the time.
Yeah. No, that's true. I think it's the compound effect, isn't it? Of just doing that tiny bit every day, and it adds up so much more. That's what you're saying. Something else you were talking about earlier, which I thought it's kind of maybe the opposite of what a lot of people in chronic health situations, you know, their mindset is. And I've been guilty of it before, kind of almost like waiting for my life to restart. Like I'm waiting for my old life to get my old life back, or I'm waiting for something to make my situation better. You were like saying the opposite of that. And you were like, oh no, like time is finite. I need to make sure that, you know, tomorrow I go and do some crazy bungee jump or something like that I've never done before, because, you know, we've only got a certain amount of days left on this planet. And I just thought it was amazing what you said there. You know, you could 50 years on this planet could be the best 50 years ever, compared to this 100-year where it was just like not really much happened. And is that, and I think that's a great way to live. And I think I love that. I think I do try to live more like that, but I have to check myself a lot and make sure I am being grateful, all of that. Do you have times where you do have to check yourself and you are like, I need to go back to that kind of mindset, making the most, or are you just always like that?
I think everyone has moments of being less like that. I think it's human nature. And I think it probably what makes you more relatable. But I think for me, like my biggest fear is looking back and thinking I could have done that, but I didn't.
Yeah.
And for me, it's not even about always doing the extreme things. It's just making the most out of the time we've got, even if we are having times where we are struggling. we can adapt for when we're struggling. That's the thing. It doesn't always have to be like mental, amazing things. It can just be like, today I've set, like, for example, every single day, I'll always set 5 tasks to do.
Yeah.
It's just, you look back at that day and be like, do you know what? I did those 5 tasks, that's enough. Whereas some days you will literally take on the world.
Yeah.
And for me, I guess, which is an interesting thing, is I've basically, with my CF, started this new medication, which is basically dubbed as close to a cure as you can find right now.
Wow.
And one of the biggest questions is, does that mean your mindset's going to shift? Because, which is a terrible thing to say, you might not die young now. And I'm like, no, because I could literally be hit by a bus. Like, CF may not be the end of me. So it's like, there is so many things that I want to do, but obviously there's, you can't do everything in one go. So it's like, I just think if there's things you want to do, make them your priority and find a way to kind of build up to them.
Yeah.
And we all have to check in with ourselves every so often, because life gets run away. There's external stresses that happen. But I think you just need to sometimes sit back and be like, what's my stress that I need to handle? Why am I holding everyone else's? Or like, if you're being a support network to someone, you don't need to hold their stress as part of your day.
Yeah.
You need to kind of let things go, because I think a lot of the reasons why people feel really weighed down by things is because of external stresses that they can't control. Like, I'm a firm believer of, if you can control something, worry about it, fix it. If you can't control it, you've got to let it go.
Yeah.
There's nothing you can do about it.
Yeah.
Like, it's like the saying, I think it's like, if it's not going to matter in 5 years, don't spend more than 5 minutes worrying about it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think that's the thing. I think we all sometimes can spend too much time stressing or holding on to stress that actually doesn't concern us, which is why we then feel more weighed down and less on point with perhaps the mindset that we're aiming for.
Yeah.
When actually sometimes you need to sit back and be like, actually, my life is great. Yeah, it's not perfect. Life goes up and down. That is just the way it is. But actually, so long as I'm taking these steps to keep pushing forward, no matter the hurdles, that's really what matters.
And that, I love that 5 years and 5 minutes. It's something I was actually writing it down yesterday. I've only been exposed to that kind of thinking because like a couple of years ago, I just made the conscious decision to just start reading a lot more like personal development books, and continually reading books by people who are excelling and doing all the stuff that you're doing, and just mindset wise, it's almost as good as like therapy. I'd say it's better than therapy because nowhere near as expensive. And you can just continually, and podcasts and that side of things. So for me, I try to just expose myself on a daily basis to this positivity. What's your advice to someone who again is kind of at the opposite end of the scale mindset wise at the moment? They feel so negative about their situation. Like, what do you do on a daily basis to train your mind and make sure those times where you have to check yourself, they're not as frequent?
So what I would suggest for people that are struggling would be, firstly, make sure every single day there's something you actually enjoy doing. Life is not meant to be like pushing yourself into like the depths of hard all the time. Yeah. But also it is really important to do something that you don't want to do every day. It could be anything, like from like going to do that fitness or tidying your house or something that you don't want to do, but you always feel better when you've done the task you don't want to do.
Yeah. I
am a firm believer of that. But also sitting down and maybe writing a few things that you are grateful for, or that you do have. Like for me, like if I've got a house to live in, food, and friends, then my life is great. I can control everything else.
Yeah.
And, for me, like routine is key. So like I'll go to bed at the same time. I'll have the same bedtime routine. I'll have the same get up routine every single day, no matter the day of the week. I don't believe in cheat days. I don't believe in like fully slobbing around just because I know how my mindset works. Like for me, I eat, like for example, food is very powerful when it comes to mindset and your relationship with that, because you find that people that are struggling tend to binge on sugar or tend not to be eating the most healthy. Whereas if you can find a nice balanced way to live that suits you and your mindset and your lifestyle, you're going to progress forward, which is why when people message me and say, well, you don't seem to have a rest day, I was like, well, I do. It's just more of an active rest day, such as going out on a slow bike ride or like walking my dog or something. I'm an active person. I don't see why I should sit down all day. I don't maybe have to be doing something that actually stresses my body, but it's more for my mindset.
Yeah.
even if it's raining outside, get out there. Like you're just going to get a bit wet. Like the biggest lesson I've actually learned, which is really interesting from my puppy, is the joy that she gets from simply leaving the house to go outside, even in the rain. I know it sounds really silly, but I feel like weather is very dependent on people's mood.
Yeah.
Whereas like this week, every time I've taken her out, it's literally torrential rain. And she's like having the best day. And I'm like, we all need to live more like Nala, because she is just having the best time, no matter the weather, and just playing. And I think as adults, we forget how to play, and we forget how to, because I think there's like I think this is quite a sad fact. I think the average time per day and number of times per day that adults laugh is between 5 and 13. Isn't that really sad? Whereas kids is something like 100 and something.
Really?
And I'm like, do you know what? We all just need to obviously continue to work and be strong and push through and kind of work towards the goals. We also need to have more fun.
Yeah. Yeah. That's so true. That's so
Because I think
true.
the more fun you have, the more motivated you feel, and then the more disciplined you want to become, and the more you achieve.
Yeah.
Rather than being serious, like we need to sometimes go back into being like a child, or like my dog, who's just happy.
So the moral of this podcast is be like Nala.
Yes.
Okay, cool. We should have just said that at the beginning. So how are you today? Like, as in general, are you better than ever? Are you like, what's your situation health wise? I know you're on this new medication, which sounds amazing, but like in general, how are you?
Yeah, I feel great today. I've had a really good week. I've had quite a busy week actually, which I thrive off being a bit busier anyway.
Yeah.
And I've got a great weekend ahead, and yeah, I feel great today. And also, you know, with this new medication, it's given me like a newfound energy. Not that I need it anymore, but here we are. We have more.
Yeah.
There's always more. And actually, for the first time in my entire life, I think this is what it must be like to breathe without restriction.
Really?
So I'm grateful for that. It means that all the things I want to achieve will be a little bit easier. Like I did a shoot on Wednesday, and we had to do all these grueling workouts for the shoot. And I got to the end of it, and I was like, oh my God, like it was obviously hard, but I was like, this must be what it's like. I didn't even realize the struggle I had before.
Yeah.
So I was like, wow, like I think the human body is amazing and what it can do. And so for me, I've kind of woken up today and I'm like, I always decide it's going to be a great day, even if I don't feel great anyway. I'm like, oh, it's going to be a great day, no matter what.
Yeah. What's really interesting about, so you've now, there's this new drug that could be an absolute game changer, a life changer for a lot of people in your situation. You could have spent your whole life up until this point with a completely different mindset, feeling completely, despondent, negative towards life, and had a really struggle, a real bad life up until this point. And then you come across this drug and your life begins today, which is mental. And rather than do that, you've had this amazing life, and now you've got this thing that's come up, and you could have been two completely different people. Do you ever think about that?
Yeah, of course, because obviously when I come across all these different people, and obviously if they've had different struggles or they don't have the same mindset, it just shows the power of the mind.
Yeah.
Because I know it's not always as easy as this, but if you want to change your life, you just have to simply change your mind. Like if you train your mind to be the strongest tool you've got, then you physically can do anything. Like your body will always give up before your mind will always give up before your body. But you can always do more than you think, always.
Yeah.
And this is why I'm such a promoter of, you've just got to work on your thought patterns, your mindset, the way you perceive things, even like down to negative comments on social media. I'm like, yeah, they're rubbish because we all get them, but it's actually a perception of that person. It's actually nothing to do with you. And normally the more successful you are, the more negativity you will have from people because they're not doing what you want to do, or they're not achieving like you are, or they don't have the power to do it at this moment in time.
Yeah.
Instead of sitting back and those people being like, I'm feeling like this because actually I could do more, and actually I can work on that, and I can do what they're doing.
Yeah.
Their initial reaction is to do that. Like I've had plenty of negative comments in the past. And actually I'm just like, do you know what? If I can help you change your mind and show that you can, then my job here is done.
Yeah. No, that's so true. So you talked about it right at the beginning, actually. You said, you're so grateful for what you've got, and for, I think you were saying, for the, for what it's given you. Could you just expand a little bit on that? Like, what are the things that you're grateful for that never would have happened, had you not been diagnosed, had you not had the condition that you've got?
Yeah, of course. So I'm a firm believer that your struggles are your strength, and it's struggles that make your life if you just decide to use them to your benefit. Like for me, I've got a very unique mindset because of the experiences and the journey that I've gone through so far.
Yeah.
And I can guarantee you that if I hadn't had that struggle at 19 years old, the last 10 years of my life wouldn't have been quite so amazing. And I wouldn't have been so determined to basically say yes to all the opportunities and just push myself. Like a lot of the opportunities that have come my way, I've just turned up and been like, yeah, I'll do it. I'll be there. But they've kind of landed and been like, I'm like, oh yeah, I can run an ultramarathon. Oh yeah, I can ride the country. Oh yeah, I can do this. So like, I'm just but without having that moment of being told that actually this time you might die, I may have not then had the life I've had. And it's given me such a unique mindset. Like I'm a firm believer that everyone should have the courage to find their own adventure in life and live life on their terms. But what you do find is people tend to veer towards what other people are doing because they don't take the time out to do that, or they don't have the reasons to push themselves. Like you find that in the face of adversity, that people are more likely to push themselves to live than if you went through a whole life without it. Like a good example is my friend Tom. He lives in Dubai. He's an ultra runner. He's got his own business. 10 years ago, he was diagnosed with cancer, got told he was going to die. He said, no, I'm not going to die. Obviously got over it, then became the ultra marathon runner, then set up the business. And now he's super successful. And he also says, in with the things that he talks about, is he attributes his success to the fact that he got told he was never going to do it. So there's a massive link between mindset and adversity and achievement. Obviously everyone has a level of adversity. It doesn't have to be to the extreme of like obviously Tom or myself, but it's up to you to decide like what you want. So like, for me, like I'm so grateful that I've had this opportunity of an early start. From a young age, I always got told you can't do this, you can't do that. Like for example, like I wanted a horse and my parents got told she can't be around horses. And then my parents were like, go on then, we'll let you have riding lessons. And then after 20 years of having horses and riding, they were like, well, you're fine. So, I'm not saying every person with CF can then go and ride a horse and be fine. I'm just saying like, it just shows unless you investigate what you can do and push yourself just to see, you just never know. So it's always worth trying. And for me, like my life has been very up and down with health and things, but also every time I look back at something that was harder, there's always something so much better that has come out of it. It's led me down such an amazing path, or something I could never even imagine being able to do, or being able to be part of. So if anyone is struggling right now, embrace it, because it won't last forever. Something will come along, you'll land somewhere, or like an opportunity will come up and your life will be transformed. Like we have to struggle to upscale. If we don't struggle, we stay where we are. Which is why I'm a firm believer of struggling, obviously enjoying the journey, because it is about enjoying the journey, not the end result always. But also the struggle is what gives you your life.
And I think you've almost answered my last question, but I'm going to ask it anyway. There's a lot of people right now who are listening to this who have got completely different situations going on, from chronic fatigue, from CF, fibromyalgia, MS, all of these kind of things. But probably, if they're listening to this, they're probably maybe not in the greatest place physically, but also mentally. What advice would you give to someone who has had a continual negative mindset and can't really see a way out, and is just seeing all of these years ahead of them like filled with with misery, that kind of mindset? What would be your advice to someone like that now?
For me, I'd say find something that you're passionate about. It doesn't matter what it is. It could be anything. Make sure that's in your life. Your circle is one of the most powerful things you can have. So the people that you surround yourself with, the mindsets that you surround yourself with. If you're going to be around and talking to negative people all the time, you're going to become that person. You become more like the top 5 people you spend your time with.
Yeah.
So like choose your circle wisely. Like I went through a period of time of basically eliminating, sounds a bit harsh, people that weren't benefiting me in terms of I'm not saying like getting things from people. I'm saying I wanted to be more like X, Y, and Z. So I was like, well, these people are more like that. So that's what I'm going to do.
Yeah.
And then gradually, the people I now see on a regular basis are the kinds of people that I want to be. Not because we're all doing the same things, but the way they perceive things, their mindset, etc. Whereas obviously what is more likely to happen if you're feeling negative is that you're more likely to connect with people that are in the same way because you can relate. However, they also, unless they are working on their own mindsets, aren't going to help you get out of the situation you're in. So finding something you love doing and doing it regularly. Movement is key. Like I know obviously if it's like chronic fatigue, even if it's 5 minutes a day, do something that makes you feel good. It could be anything from like stretching to yoga to the gym or walking or anything that you feel like you can do, because obviously there's a strong scientific link between movement and positivity and endorphins and things like that. But also nutrition can also have a negative impact on your mind. So, you know, if you're struggling or you want more information, obviously I can always help that being a nutrition coach, but also find someone to work with that can help you kind of develop better patterns and better routines. There is so much that you can do in your day, even if the thing you do takes 30 seconds because it makes you feel better.
Yeah.
It's just important that you actually do this every single day.
Yeah.
Because 1 day or 2 days out will push you back more steps than you realize. And even if, as I've said, it's 1% per day, which is nothing, that could be the change that you need for the long-term lifestyle mindset development into having a better life.
Yeah.
And I think it's just, for me, like, I'm obviously very passionate about doing loads of big extreme things, but it doesn't have to be that. It could be just really simple life pleasures, the really nice stuff that we do. But it's also just really important to take action and execute the things that you want to achieve, even on the days that you feel less likely or less wanting to do them, even if you gave 1% of effort.
Yeah. Wow, there's a lot of amazing advice there. I think the things that resonate for me is definitely, and that's the reason for this podcast. Really, is when you say surround yourself with the right people, surround yourself with positive people. That's so true, and particularly in an online community, there's a lot of negativity. People go online and these message boards, and it's a lot of negative venting about their situations and no hope. Whereas something like this, I'm hoping that, it exposes people to like you, people like you to them that they never would have, been around before. And then hopefully maybe gives them the enthusiasm to find more people like you and seek out those stories. And then, I think what you were saying then about actually doing something every day, or it's about having that tick off an achievement. And so you have like a sense of achievement. And that's, you mentioned it earlier, that 5 things in a day. I was listening to a podcast the other day and it was talking about winning the day. And if you could just do those 5 things, you win the day. Yeah, exactly. And that's a great feeling. Look, thanks so much for coming on. I think you've put a completely different perspective on all of this stuff for a lot of people out there. And just what you're doing is amazing and impressive, and making me feel like I need to go and sort my fitness out, because I've been pushing myself over the years, and then I've got these injuries recently that I'm using as an excuse. And you just saying that means, I'm definitely not going to be using it as an excuse anymore. I'm going to do at least something to push me in the right direction. So it's been therapy for me today, this has. Thank you so much.
Anytime, you know where I'm at.
Just finally, before we go, if people want to follow you on Instagram, or if they just maybe want to reach out to you for anything that you mentioned, the nutrition side of things, maybe stuff that you could help people with, could you just, I'll drop it in the show notes, but if you could just let them know your details.
Yeah, of course. Probably the easiest way to contact me is on Instagram at Sophie Grace Holmes. All my platforms are my name, so like my website, my YouTube, everything. So
nice and simple. Cool, awesome. Well, thanks so much for coming on, and I can't wait to see what crazy thing you're going to be doing next.
There's lots to come, but thank you so much for having me on. It's been a pleasure.
No worries.